Maxey from outside. Sixers lead, courtesy of Tyrese Maxey.
Hit deep to left field. Going back is LoCastro. It is gone!
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Beef Up Front podcast here on Pick Swap Media. Your host, Ryan Coyle, as we continue on with our college football preview series under 2 weeks away now from week 0, officially kicking off. We're going to be ramping up these episodes, probably try and have one out, almost every day as we line up for week 0. And then we're also going to have a few more as we head into week 1 before we get into our game coverage and our weekly previews there. But today we're going to continue on with our preview, headed over to the Big 12 to hit on last year's Big 12 champion, maybe the surprise of the entire season in college football, the Arizona State Sun Devils. We already touched on Texas Tech out of the Big 12. We've hit on Michigan. We've hit on South Carolina, Miami, USC, Oklahoma. We've hit on a bunch of schools, Clemson. And today we continue on with Arizona State, who checks in today as of today's recording. The AP poll came out, and Arizona State projected first in the Big 12 and number 11 in the entire country there in the AP top 25 poll. And, I think you definitely give them the benefit of the doubt. Did they catch lightning in a bottle last year as they're projected to finish last in the Big 12 and they go all the way to the college football playoff and win the Big 12 last year? Maybe, potentially, but I think when you look at what they returned this year, we could see pretty similar success this upcoming season, and they should be competing for a Big 12 title. But as always with our previews, hit on it all, the head coach, recap the 2024 season, go over the offense and the defense as we head into 2025, and then go through a schedule prediction as well as some gambling kind of numbers and notes for this team as we look ahead to this upcoming season. Well, so when you look at 2025 Arizona State Sun Devils, they will be led by head coach Kenny Dillingham, 35 years old, as he enters year number 3 at our Arizona State, his alma mater. A 14-12 total record through his first 2 seasons. Obviously, a drastic turnaround last year. Year 1, 3-9. Year 2, 11-3, a Big 12 title win, and they took Texas to the brink in the college football playoff. So he figures to be, I think, one of the hottest commodities in the sport at the head coaching spot going forward. Does that, impact him, or is this where he wants to be forever at Arizona State? As I said, he grew up rooting for Arizona State. That's where he went. This is where he says he wants to be. This is where he wants to be the coach as. But, all right, say 5 years down the line, Alabama opens up and comes calling. Or you say, who knows, Penn State opens up, they come calling. Do you take that phone call? Yes, you're probably taking that phone call. Are you going there? Who knows? It remains to be seen. Florida, Billy Napier doesn't work out. Do they come calling for Kenny Dillingham? What can you do with all our resources, all our money down here at this program? A great offensive mind, very passionate coach, very animated coach, has a very bright future. Only 35 years old. Does he make Arizona State a national power and stay there forever? He could probably go somewhere else and double his salary, but it's going to be a cool thing to kind of track over these next few years. I think he's going to be wanted several times by big-time programs. He's going to get offers, but I think we're going to see a few Arizona State extensions before he goes anywhere. Ultimately, does he leave? Remains to be seen. What can he really do at Arizona State? So much going forward. But a really good young coach and a really exciting head coach as he enters into year 3 at the head coaching spot for Arizona State. When you recap and look back at 2024, a historic season for the Arizona State football program last season. They go 11-3, win the Big 12 title game in a drubbing of Iowa State. They were projected to finish 16th in the conference last year in the Big 12. That's dead last, and they go on to win the title game, go to the college football playoff for the first time in school history, and then they lose took Texas to the brink. They lost a double overtime to Texas, 39-31 in a classic game. Almost got away with that game with a win. Quinn Ewers makes probably the best throw of his college career and keeps Texas alive. But that was a very fun Arizona State team to watch last year. I feel like I watched them maybe more than any team in the country last year. It was kind of all eyeballs were on them. They had a breakout year. They had one of the most exciting offenses in all college football with Sam Levitt at the quarterback, Cam Scatterbo at the running back, Jordan Tyson at the receiver spot. Scored 30 or more in 9 of their 14 games, dropped 40 or more in 4 different games. So this is a team that all eyes were them for a reason last year, especially for me. I loved watching them. I love watching Scatterby run the football. Just said earlier with Dillingham, I really like him as a coach. I think he's young, exciting, fun, passionate head coach. And they were just a team that I think a lot of people rallied around last year. An underdog story, projected to finish last in the conference. The Big 12 this year doesn't even put out a poll just due to that. So I thought that was pretty funny. But, an unofficial poll, they're number one as they check in at number 11. I think it was Kansas State at 17. Iowa State at 22 and Texas Tech at 23. So 4 teams out of the Big 12 projected in this top 25 this year. But just an awesome season last year. Can they replicate that success? Can they continue this success in the program? Can be the thing to monitor, the story to monitor for this Arizona State team as we head into the season. When you look at the offensive side of the ball for this year, I will say this about this Arizona State team. They might have the best quarterback wide receiver duo in the entire country that returns from last season, with Sam Levitt at the quarterback spot, Jordan Tyson at the receiver. Now, by year's end, that could be a completely different story. Arch Manning and whoever decides to step up as the number one receiver for Texas. Drew Aller and whoever decides to step up to be the number one receiver at Penn State. Julian Sayin or Lincoln Keenholz and Jeremiah Smith at Ohio State. All those guys could surpass this duo. But returning from last year, production-wise, experience-wise, success-wise, Sam Levitt and Jordan Tyson might be the best 1-2 punch at the quarterback receiver spot for any returning duo in the entire country. So they got a lot of expectations and pressure on them, though, I think, as they end of this year. They're no longer the underdog. They're no longer the hunted. They're no longer the hunter. Yeah, that's what it is. They're no longer the hunter. They are now the hunted. But entering the season based off last year, what we know, this is going to be a duo that puts up a lot of numbers and should be as good of a duo as you find. Last year, during his first year as a starting quarterback, Sam Levitt threw for a little over 2,800 yards, 24 touchdowns, and he rushed for another 5. That was in year one as a starter, takes his team to the Big 12 championship, wins the Big 12 title game, and as we said, almost knocks off a Texas team that a lot of people consider potentially the best team in the country last year. So he was a great quarterback in his first year as a starter, should have an even better year, I think, this year. Jordan Tyson at the receiver spot went for 1,100 yards and 10 touchdowns last season. One of the best receivers in the country. Might be the first receiver drafted in this upcoming draft this year. Obviously, losing Cam Scatterby was big. He was one of the funner players to watch in college football last year. Just a downhill runner, fierce runner, had that crazy throw on like the flea flicker play. Or the reverse play wherever it was against Texas where he threw a deep touchdown. Just an awesome college football story last year, coming up from Sacramento State, becoming, arguably the best player in the entire Big 12 last season. But that's a lot of production there to replace with Scatterby. He was the lifeblood of that offense, but you bring back Levitt at the quarterback spot, obviously important. Bring back Jordan Tyson, and in total, this offense returns 8 starters. Watch out for Kanye Udo, one of the best running back transfers in the entire country. He transfers into Arizona State from Army. Love his fit in this offense. I think he reminds me just the way he runs a lot of Cam Scatterby and what he did for that offense last year. But returning 8 starters, you have a kind of a plug-and-play running back here in Udo, and most importantly, you bring back your quarterback and your star receiver. There's no reason with Kenny Dillingham leading the way here that this won't be one of the best offenses in the Big 12 again. Look at the defense as well from last year. They returned 9 starters from a team that allowed 22.6 points per game last year. Arizona State did. That compared to 2 years ago in Kenny Dillingham's first year where they went 3-9. They allowed 31.8 points per game. So they took a major step up last year, almost 10 points per game better. Reading up on the Phil Steele magazine, the preview, the in-depth kind of stuff. He loves the defense this year, Phil Steele. He loves the depth on the defensive line, what they bring back from last year. He thinks this whole group takes another step forward this upcoming season. They return both their leading tacklers with Mike Roswell and Xavier Alford. Do they have an elite pass rusher, though? I think that's where I kind of draw the line on this defense. Do they have a guy where, all right, Big 12 title game, 3rd down, you got to go sack Sawyer Robertson at Baylor, and, got to have it type of play. Do they have that guy on this team? I don't think they return any starters or any players from last year that had over 3.5 sacks. They have a kind of deep and versatile group, but they don't really have that stud guy. Can they get a guy to step up and get 7, 8, 9, 10 sacks this year? That could kind of put this team from good to great and actually be a contender once they get to the playoff next year. The secondary should be pretty lit as well. Should be one of the better groups in the country. Return 4 starters, and Phil Steele ranks them in his magazine as the 12th best secondary in the entire country. So a very good back end, a very deep and versatile front end. Might not have that elite player, but they also have 2 returning tacklers on this defense from last season's team. Brian Ward is in his second year here as a DC. Looking forward to what he has in his second year. That they really elevated them from last year. Wasn't a very high bar to elevate them from, but still the improvement from Dillingham's first year to his second year with this defense. Brian Ward leading the way. I think you got to look at Arizona State going into the year as potentially the best defense in the Big 12. Not a huge bar there, but they might be the best unit on that side, them and Utah. I think you're probably putting those two teams at the top, Kansas State in the mix as well. The Big 12, though, in its entirety, wide open. A lot of room for arguments and debates, but I really like what this Arizona State defense brings to the table this upcoming season. All right, we'll get into the schedule prediction now. And some gambling notes and nuggets as well. The over-under for this Arizona State team heading into 2025, 8.5. Over set at plus 100, under at minus 120, plus 550 to win the Big 12. That's tied for first with Kansas State. As I said earlier, they enter the season number 11 in the country, Kansas State at 17, so a little bit higher up there in the rankings. I think maybe they get the push from being the Big 12 champion last year. 100 to 1 to win the Natty, so not really any real consideration with that. Plus 380 to make the playoff, minus 550 to miss. So when you look at those odds, it's like, all right, maybe a second Big 12 team gets in. But the odds makers are kind of saying to us there, I think telling us there's a good chance that only one team out of the Big 12 is getting it, and it's most likely you're going to have to be the champion. So when we go into the schedule prediction for this Arizona State team, game by game, when you look at some of their toughest games, though, on the road, I think that's where they kind of get screwed. But I still think that this is an Arizona State team that's going to be able to have a very good season. First, Northern Arizona, give them a win there. At Mississippi State, I think it's going to be the worst team of the Power Fives, probably maybe out of the entire Power Four. Definitely the worst team in the SEC. Them, like in Kentucky, kind of in the mix there. So I'll give Arizona State a win in that one. Versus Texas State gave them a run for their money last year, but Arizona State at home in this one, I'll give them a win there. Start out at 3-0. One of their three toughest games, I think, on the schedule. They go to Baylor. I think Baylor's going to be pretty solid in this kind of 8-4, 9-3 mix, competing for the Big 12 championship. But going on the road there, I'll give Baylor a win. So Arizona State a loss. TCU at home, I'll give them a win. At Utah, going to Utah is never easy. I like Utah, spoiler, to win the Big 12 this year. I'll give Utah the win in that one. So Arizona State drops their second game. Versus Texas Tech, I'll give them a W in that one. Texas Tech actually took them down last year, so a revenge game. Versus Houston at home, I'll give Arizona State a win in that one. Goes to Iowa State. So they're three toughest games, in my opinion, at Baylor, at Utah, at Iowa State. You could throw Texas Tech in that mix as well, but you get them at home. If they can, out of those three road games, at Baylor, at Utah, at Iowa State, I think they can legitimately win double-digit games, get the 10 wins. But if you lose those three, I think it's going to be hard for this team to get the double-digit wins, at least in the regular season. Maybe they win the Big 12 title game. Maybe they win a game in the playoff and kind of help them get over the top. But go to Iowa State, I'm going to have to give them a loss in that one. First, West Virginia, I like what Rich Rod's going to build down there. I think they're going to be back in the mix in no time, maybe even kind of similar to what Arizona State was last year, where it was a terrible year one, but right back in the mix by year two. But I think it's going to take some time. I'll give Arizona State a win there. At Colorado, interested to see what they can do this year, but I think they're going to be 5-7, 6-6-ish. I like Arizona State to go there and win. Versus Arizona, I like them to obviously win that game at home as well. So I got them going 9-3, over under 8.5. I think there's a few kind of swing games in this one. Like, do they go to Baylor and lose? Do they go to Utah and lose? Do they go to Iowa State and lose? Then you only give yourself kind of room for one more potential, or no slip ups. You lose those three games, you're going under the win total. So it's a win total I'm probably sticking away from, but I think if you were to more so bet on anything, I would probably bet them to win the Big 12 at plus 550. I think that's probably your play there. Over 8.5, I think, is a little too close, just because of how close it is to this team winning 8 or 9 games. Truly is a coin flip there, in my opinion. Some of these swing games, they'll have to go their way. But for them to go and win the Big 12 at plus 550, I think that's probably your best bet, because if you like that, then they're probably also going over the win total if you kind of want to, lump those two together and take both of those plays. So I like Arizona State to go 9-3 this year. I think that's probably good enough to get to the Big 12 title game, or at least in the mix. Maybe with 3 conference losses, you might not get there. But I could definitely see them being back, in this championship game, playing a Utah, playing a Kansas State. Probably those 3 teams in the mix at the end of the season for the Big 12 title. But that'll do it for this episode of Beef Up Front, the Arizona State preview. We will circle back to the SEC in our next episode. We'll surprise you guys with that one. But thank you, everyone, for tuning in. As always, please like, please subscribe. We'll be talking to you next time here on Pick Swap Media.